Hey, welcome back to School for Startups Radio. Again, thank you so much for being with us. As entrepreneurs, one of the most important things we do is innovate to create these tiny baby steps where we make our products incrementally better one step at a time. I am very passionate about this, and you need to be too. I'm very excited to introduce someone to talk about this. Her name is Catherine Radeka. She's the executive director of the Rapid Learning Cycles Institute and is author of a new book called High Velocity Innovation. We're going to talk all about it. Catherine, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
It is our honor. Okay, creativity versus innovation. Do you see a big distinction there? Are those words important to you, the differences?
So I think that creativity is an important skill. And I use the word skill because I think people are creative, even people that don't often think of themselves as creative. When you really probe them and you really probe what they do, you often find they're creative in ways that they didn't expect. And so I think creativity is a skill that is something that can be learned. That's an important part of innovation, because the way that I define innovation is it's basically doing something that has never been done before in order to meet some compelling need in a new way. And so innovation is something that happens, of course, in a startup or in an R&D organization. It also, if you talk to people about innovation, that you often find that there are areas of their lives where they are very innovative. For example, if you are familiar with the community of things like the maker community, where a lot of them consider themselves hobbyists, but there's a tremendous amount of innovation happening in that space. So yeah, that's kind of how I relate the words. Creativity is a skill that's important for innovation.
All right. And as entrepreneurs, which one is more important? Is it important to be creative at all?
I think it's impossible to be an entrepreneur without being creative, that the entrepreneurial drive is essentially a creative drive to bring something into existence that wasn't there before. Even if your business is something as, kind of everyday as like, building an electric, a business like an electrician business or something like that, you're still bringing something into force that's never been before. And so I think that creative side of entrepreneurship is one of the things that caused many of us to get into entrepreneurs. It was one of the drivers for me, for going out on my own when I left my corporate job. And then the innovation piece is, well, so I'm a new company. What am I offering to the world that's different? What's unique about me? What's new about what I'm doing? And that's where a lot of the innovation comes in. Is like, okay, so maybe I am, doing a very basic business like running electricians. Well, what am I doing that's different? What am I doing that's new? How am I serving my customers better than my competitors? And that provides even the smallest companies for opportunities to be innovative.
That's right. Our refrigerator is leaking right now, Catherine. I was wondering if you could help me with that. Oh, wait. My point was, so we called last night at 6:07. We noticed at 6:07, of course, that the refrigerator was leaking, and we have a standard appliance guy that we have used over the years, and he called back at around 8 o'clock at night and said he couldn't come this today during the normal business hours because he's completely booked, but he'll be here tonight at 7 p.m. And I was thinking, that's not innovative, but that's a really damn useful innovation from where I come from. He is setting himself apart by willing to show up at 7 o'clock and it'll be probably a Friday night at 7 o'clock that he shows up.
Right. And all the systems that he's developed around his business to enable him to show up at 7 o'clock at night and be as responsive as he is to you, can be an opportunity for innovation.
Yes. All right, so I want to ask a little bit more about creativity. I'm not a big fan of creativity simply because I have I've never once had a creative thought in my life. I think that other people consider me creative because of some of the things I've done, but I know deep down, Catherine, that everything I've done is a blatant copy of someone else, of something else. So I ran across some data. London School of Economics says that 93% of businesses are copies of existing businesses. And therefore, I mean, that's a huge opportunity for innovation where I sit. if I'm hearing that data for the first time, I think, well, I don't need a creativity lightning bolt from God. All I need is to get 1 inch better than the guy who did it before me. It changes the game. What do you think?
Yeah, well, this is one of the myths about innovation, is that innovation requires you to do something completely new that the world has never seen before in any form. And the reality is that if you look even at some of the things that we consider to be iconic innovations, like the Tesla electric vehicles or the original iPhone, they represent taking core ideas from different places and putting them together in new ways. So, the Tesla, for example, is a lot about how we drive mechanical systems with electricity, how we store that electricity, how we charge that. And then they put it into an electric vehicle, and then using mass production techniques to make that electric vehicle affordable. I mean, that is innovation. And you could look at it and say that those individual pieces were not so creative, but the creative idea of putting it together and wrapping a new business model around it is, the creative element. And kind of getting back to, even your appliance example, there are still lots of opportunity. I mean, so the fact that the person has the energy drive to go out on their own to find ways to serve clients is, they may not be doing anything particularly they might not look at that and say, oh, wow, that's really creative what I'm doing, to make sure I'm at my customer at 7 o'clock at night. But what that's not so much the source of innovation. The source of innovation is, okay, I have customers who need me to work outside of hours. How can I arrange my life so that I can do that? And so I guess that's the thing that I keep coming back to with my own clients, is they often think, I'm not doing anything truly innovative unless I'm doing something that's so out there that and so pushing the boundaries that it has never been done before by anybody. The reality is that the most creative products that I've personally encountered have often been the ones where they've taken information or an idea from one domain and moved it into a different one. Just as you have a podcast, okay, so podcasts have been around for a while, but now you've got one that's focused on startups. You call it School for Startups. I assume because you call it School for Startups, you're approaching it in a particular way that is taking ideas from other places and applying it to this medium. And that's the kind of innovation that often leads to really great long, sustainable businesses that are really difficult for others to copy.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the process. I have a business idea. It's really great. I'm going to start a gizzard business. We take everything that they won't put into a chicken nugget and we sell those, and we are damn good at it, Catherine. So I've just hired you to be my chicken gizzard innovation specialist, and we'll produce business cards with that title on it. You can give it out at dinner parties and stuff. How do I innovate now? So I'm the client. Help me. I want to get better. I'm dedicated to being the best chicken gizzard company in all of Southern Alabama. And so how do I start this process of innovation? I got my coffee in one hand. I got my pen in the other hand. Go. What do I do?
Okay, well, so I think the first thing to do is we're starting with something. So we're basically starting with the raw material for a product, which is all of the stuff that is not going into the chicken nugget. And so we're using that as our starting point. And then we're going to do some ideation around what could we do with that? Could we turn it into a kind of specialty product? Could we, who would we sell it to? What would they use it for? And to be very kind of brainstorming, very out there in our ideas. What we'll get out of that is a list of things that then need to be filtered. I tell my clients, I'm going to help you get your best ideas to market faster. That doesn't mean that every idea is going to get to market. It means that we're going to get your best ideas to market. So we have this list of ideas, and then we have to go and through a screening process in order to find which of those ideas are going to make it. We want those to be fast. We want to do some very targeted learning about each of these ideas in order to find out how viable they are. At this stage, that's often looking at how they might meet a customer need, that they didn't know that they had. For example, if we can find a way to make these things taste delicious, then we might have invented a new snack category that didn't exist before. But we're going to need to do some basic understanding of customer needs in order to identify whether any of these ideas have an opportunity. Once we've said, okay, this is the one, we're going to produce a new snack product, gizzard snacks, based on, with these raw materials, then we're going to look at what are the major decisions that we have in the course of this that are going to be the kinds of decisions that are difficult to unmake later. For example, which kind of snack is it? Are we competing against like a jerky product? Are we competing against like a corn chip kind of product? Where exactly is this? What texture is it going to have? What basic sensory profile is it going to have? Those things are difficult to change later because they have a lot to do with positioning and branding and where you put it on the shelf and how you position it to your at first customers, which are the resellers who'll be putting it out on their floor. And then once we've identified those decisions, then we understand when we need to make those decisions, which are often later than we think we need to make those decisions. And then what do we need to learn to make those decisions with confidence? And so, if we're trying to figure out which snack category we're going to be in, that's a fairly early decision because it determines our manufacturing process and our packaging and a lot of other things about it. But things like which specific retailers we're going to approach first might actually be a fairly late decision. Once we've already done things like sampling at food markets, farmers markets and things to demonstrate we've got a good product, then we would be able to figure out this is the right retailer for this, whether it's a mom and pop convenience store that might be open to something new or or if we're going to do farmers markets or something. And so we focus then on pulling learning forward for those early decisions, trying to learn as much as we can about the different categories of products, trying to make some different prototypes of different products and testing those to begin to enable us to make that decision so that the rest of our decisions can be made on time. Now, one of the things that I especially think entrepreneurs can get stuck in is that there isn't a natural pull for a lot of what we do because we're putting things out into the market that have never been done before and nobody knows who we are. We don't have customers that are pulling this from us. And for that reason, I think it's important for these cycles of learning to be very fast. We call it rapid learning cycles and we mean that rapid. We mean 2 weeks maybe, or at the most for a major decision, 4 weeks, in order to begin to learn very rapidly about to build the knowledge we need to make these decisions with confidence, and yet recognize that if we want to actually get a product out, we need to be making these decisions and we need to be, put a timeline together of when these decisions need to be made and we need to hold ourselves accountable for meeting that timeline. And that is how entrepreneurs turn an idea like, let's make something out of chicken gizzards into something that actually shows up on a consumer shelf while the entrepreneur still has time, money, and energy to get it done.
All right. Very important point, and this is a new topic for the conversation. The idea and the book title of the high velocity. You mentioned 2 weeks. Why is that important? Why does it matter if I do my innovation in 2 weeks versus 2 months? And granted, I want to get the product on the shelf as soon as possible so that I can make money and all of that, and I have limited resources. So I get that point. But say I'm Coca-Cola or some of the other clients you've had, and the list is Hewlett-Packard, Johnson & Johnson, Whirlpool, Toyota. Toyota's not under any time constraints for their innovation. Why do they care? Why does the time matter so much?
Well, one of the key things that people often don't understand about innovation is that it is primarily knowledge work. It's primarily around building the knowledge that you need to make good decisions. That knowledge work expands to fill the available time. So if you gave me 2 weeks to help you understand what I could do with these chicken gizzards, I'm going to go off and I'm going to look at it in 2 weeks and I'm going to come back with something. If you give me 2 months, I'm going to take 2 months. If you give me 6 months, I'm going to take 6 months. And if you give me no deadline at all, I may never come back, or it will take me
It's called job security, Catherine. The whole world was built that way. That's
know,
what our government is for.
Right. But as entrepreneurs, that's not what we want.
That's right. As entrepreneurs, it's horrible.
Get our ideas out into the world, right? We want to see what we've created, go out there and be meeting customer needs and making us money. So for that reason, it's helpful to place what we call time boxes around things. The time box is basically, okay, I'm going to go out, I'm going to learn everything I can learn about the chicken gizzard market in 4 weeks. And then in 4 weeks, I'm going to come back and I'm going to share what I've learned with the rest of my team. And then we're going to use that knowledge to make some decisions. And, and that will limit me in scope to the kind of research that's appropriate. Now, what I mean by that is that if this is the first time we've looked at it, I probably want to just do a very rapid survey of the market just to understand the landscape and then decide, is this worth doing at all? As I get further into it and I'm trying to figure out exactly what product and exactly what category, I'm going to need a deeper level of analysis, but I still don't need the exceptionally deep analysis that we're going to need to figure out what our channel strategy is going to be and our reseller strategy is going to be. And so we want to keep learning, especially in the early phases when we're still figuring out what it is, what exactly our product is. What am I building this business around? We want to keep those cycles very short and fast. What that does is it creates pull. Because what Whirlpool and Toyota and Keurig and some of the other clients that I have naturally have, as a result of the fact that they're existing businesses in the consumer market, that an entrepreneur doing something for the first time does not have, is pull from the market. They have annual cycles when they typically have new products in the market, and they tie their innovation processes, or at least my clients do, tie their innovation processes around those natural cycles so that when the customer is ready for a new product, they have a new product to show that customer. Okay, an entrepreneur doesn't naturally have that. I worked with a company called Eggersons in Australia. They are making a product that is basically a GPS collar for cattle. So rancher pushes the GPS collars on all his cattle, sends them out into the onto the range where they're going to be grazing, and is gathering a lot of information about those about each head of cattle that is going to help them do a better job of managing the herd. Now, that's a product that's never been done before. Right now, the ranchers manage their cattle basically by driving around in pickup trucks and looking at them and seeing what they're doing and maybe walking around among them, kind of checking on them. All right. So with something like that, there's no natural market pull. Ranchers see how this could really benefit them, see that it could help them do things like eliminate all of their physical fencing, but there's no natural pull for it. So what a company like Aggersons has to do is put themselves on a very strict timeline of like, okay, we're gonna spend 2 weeks learning about this, we're gonna spend 4 weeks learning about this, and then we've got these decision points that we need to make, and we're gonna make these decisions at these specific points in time. And that's to help generate pull, to make sure that these things that would otherwise take up an infinite amount of time, actually get closed in a reasonable amount of time before a startup like Eggersons runs out of investor money.
Makes a lot of sense, and that's a great product. My mother grew up on a cattle farm, and I used to go out there with my grandfather. And you're exactly right. We would just walk out amongst the cows and kind of look around and go, "Yep, they're cows." It didn't seem very scientific.
Exactly. Well, this collar enables a rancher to do things like see how much the cow is feeding versus resting. If the cow's resting too much, maybe they're ill, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I learned is that cows are actually pretty smart, and they will tell you a lot of stuff. They'll come get you when they need help. So I love the cows, and I love me some meat too. I want to change the topic just a little bit, Catherine. We've been talking about innovation in terms of the product. What about innovation in terms of delivery mechanisms or something like that? So my first business, for example, was 100% a blatant copy of another business. The only thing we changed, our innovation, was changing the location. And our competitor was located at Clark Crest Resort in Connecticut. Catherine, have you ever heard of Clark Crest Resort in Connecticut?
Never heard of it. No.
Our location was at Stanford in a place called Palo Alto and MIT in Cambridge. Have you ever heard of Stanford or MIT, Catherine? And so that was our innovation. Does that even count?
I think it definitely counts. And so for example, one of the innovations in my own business is that I moved away from pure consulting and started doing public workshops now and offering a certification. And I have to admit that we leveraged very heavily from the Project Management Institute and from various groups in Agile when we thought through our certification process. But we're offering it for people that are working on hardware products where the methods that those companies teach are not the best methods to use. And so, I mean, and I think that kind of thing is exactly what I mean when I talk about the kind of innovation that takes an idea or a concept from one place and moves it into a new sphere, and which allows a different audience or a different market to benefit from those ideas.
Do you have times when you're just not creative at all, where it just turns off? You get artist block, writer's block,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. The first few weeks when I start writing a new book is always like that for me, very much. Uh-huh.
and then you go climb a mountain? I haven't mentioned, but you've climbed, what is it? You've climbed 7 of the tallest peaks in the Cascade Mountains. I don't know if the Cascade Mountains are big or not, but it sounds pretty damn impressive. So,
It includes Mount Rainier
Oh,
and
okay. Well,
Mount
I've heard of that.
Hood,
That's
and
impressive in
Mount
Washington
Shasta
State.
is
Sure.
the southernmost Cascades. So those big, yeah, those are big mountains. And yeah, that's true. That's one of the things that I do when I'm experiencing writer's block is I try to get outside because that really helps. I'm fortunate to live in a part of the country where that's very easy. We have the Columbia River Gorge just about 10 minutes from my house. And so and doing things like that to recharge our batteries is so important as entrepreneurs, because um, if you're not doing that kind of self-care stuff, then the well kind of does run dry. And the other thing that is important about that too is that, and this is true for any group that's starting out on something new, is that there's always a little bit of needing to understand and internalize and digest what's going on before the new ideas are ready to come out. And so I wasn't kidding about the fact that when I launch a new book, I will start by writing an outline, and then I'll kind of freak out a little bit. I'll be like, oh, well, I have to write this thing, right? And so I'll have a few weeks when I'm spending a lot of time on a trail, or a lot of time just kind of sitting by the river, just kind of allowing the idea of what I'm about to do to sink in and materialize. And then, after, and charge up my batteries around that specific idea so that I can be creative.
I'm an entrepreneur and I don't like going outdoors. I like going outdoors, but not for physical exercise. And the one thing I've learned, though, is that my entrepreneurial success is tied to how much physical exercise I do. And they really do go together. And I hate to admit or say that, but the most entrepreneurial or the most creative I ever am is when I'm mowing the lawn, and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny how when you allow your brain to rest and focus on something that's very basic like that, I get a lot of really good ideas when I'm washing dishes, surprisingly. It's like that for me, that's my time. I have a kitchen window, looks over my garden, and and that's often a time when I'll have new ideas come up. And again, it's the same thing. It's like just setting, the brain gets a chance to kind of not focus on it. And then by not focusing on it, it sometimes relaxes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine, great stuff. How do we find out more? Get a copy of the book, follow you online, all of that stuff, please.
The easiest way to do that is to go to highvelocityinnovation.com. That's just all one word, highvelocityinnovation.com. You can find the book High Velocity Innovation at any bookseller, places Amazon, Barnes and Noble, etc. And that's the best way to find out about my work is to buy one of my books.
Fantastic. Catherine, thank you so much for being with us. Congratulations on the book. Hope it sells well. And we will have to have you back soon. Thanks a lot.